Today, I'm very excited to cancel a momentously deserving individual named Brittany James, MD. And Brittany James, MD, is certainly the kind of MD who wants you to always acknowledge the MD when addressing her. She describes herself in her bio as an anti-racist feminist, a physician, an activist, and a scholar. It probably tells you all you need to know that she lists anti-racist feminist before physician. She also lists her pronouns as expected. But Brittany James, MD, tweeted this a couple days ago. She said, "Minding my own business, shopping, and a middle-aged white woman asked me if I work there. When I looked at her blankly and answered back in a deadpan voice, no, she giggled it off and said, I was just wondering where to put this shirt back. But I'm a bad person if I go off?" Well, no, you're not a bad person if you go off. You're a bad person in general, and also you're a bad person if you go off. But she continues, "Kicking myself for not saying I'm a physician and letting her die of embarrassment. But something tells me she wouldn't even have the decency to be embarrassed. Most of these types don't. Stop asking black people why they are angry. I can't even shop in peace. The worst part about everyday racism of white folks is that we aren't even allowed to be angry about it. As a black woman, it would have come back on me. I'm tired." Now, after reading this, I very much want to see Dr. James at a retail store so that I can ask her if she works there. And then when she says, "I'm a physician," I'll say, "Sure you are, sweetheart. Now tell me, what aisle do I get the laundry detergent?" And I would like to say that to her just to annoy her, because annoying entitled jerks is a virtuous act, in my opinion. And I do believe in annoying entitled jerks equally and equitably, by the way. I don't care about your race or your sex. My disdain for entitled jerks knows no demographic boundaries. In fact, in this case, we should stipulate that we're dealing with an entitled elitist jerk. Because what she's really saying here is that retail workers are beneath her. She quite clearly feels that she belongs to a social strata far above that of a lowly customer service worker in a name tag. Something tells me that if someone heard her and saw her and assumed that she was a rocket scientist or an architect or something, she wouldn't be nearly as traumatized. So this is more than anything about her own fragile ego and the social caste system that she has concocted in her head and, of course, placed herself at the top of. Now, I'm not offended when people confuse me with an employee at a store. You know, I don't consider myself to be superior in any way to the guy stocking shelves at Walmart. So if somebody thinks I'm that guy, fine. What do I care? And yes, I have been asked the "do you work here" question many times in my life, admittedly not as much recently. And I think that's partly because when I'm at a store these days, most of the time, I'm shopping off of a list that my wife gave me, and the list is about the length of like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I'm walking around the aisles looking somewhat frantic and bewildered and obsessively going back to my phone as a reference point. The point is, I just don't have the vibe of a guy who works in the facility every day and knows where everything is. But back in my younger days of shopping, just for myself, and knowing exactly what I wanted and where it was, because everything I wanted was in the frozen food section, I got confused with workers much more often. And that's because when someone makes this mistake, they're responding, if they're responding to anything, they're responding to your demeanor and often the clothes that you're wearing and maybe some other signifiers that have nothing to do with race. I probably wouldn't ever be mistaken for an employee at Hot Topic or Victoria's Secret, because in those places I would stick out like a bearded guy in his mid-30s at Hot Topic or Victoria's Secret. It's not racial, though. Not everything is racial. In fact, most of the things that people think are racial these days actually aren't. So what we have here is yet another example of a person with a racial framework, a person who sees everything through a racial lens, and who assumes that everybody else does the same. In her mind, anything that could theoretically be racism must be racism. It's not just the first explanation she jumps to, but it's the only explanation. She has categorically ruled out all other potential causes. And she's done this again in spite of the fact that the interaction she describes has happened to everyone. It's totally normal, and it's not a big deal. By the way, if you want to test this out, then just imagine a white man in a red shirt at Target. Have you ever gone to Target in a red shirt? Or a blue shirt at Best Buy, standing next to a black man in a white shirt or a gray shirt or something. Who do you think is going to get stopped by someone who assumes that they're an employee? Or we could do it this way. A white guy in a collared shirt with a tie and khakis and a black guy in pajama pants. Who gets the angry older woman coming over to him and saying, "Excuse me, are you the manager?" Clearly not the guy in pajamas, no matter his race. In fact, you could argue that getting confused for an employee is a compliment. Because maybe you were the only person in the store who wasn't dressed like a slob who just woke up with a hangover 12 minutes ago. But there's another part of this, aside from the racial obsessions of Brittany here. The real driver is not even that, but more so just garden variety narcissism. She is someone who assumes, and there are a lot of people like this out there, that every banal annoyance she encounters must be unique, must be targeted, must be sinister, must be all about her somehow. She doesn't want to think that this is the sort of thing that happens to everybody. Partly because it would destroy her racial narrative, but even more because it would destroy the narrative that she keeps closer to the heart, the narrative that she is the center of the world and everything that happens to her really matters. Everything is a big deal. If she were to admit that this is an everyday, completely normal, utterly unremarkable event, then she's not only deprived of an opportunity to feel wounded, but also she must admit that her life isn't quite as unique as she assumed and hoped. Here's one thing I'll guarantee. I guarantee that Brittany is the kind of person who honks while stuck in traffic on the highway. Everybody's sitting in the same traffic jam. Everyone is suffering the same inconvenience. Nobody likes it. But there's always that person honking as if she is the main character of the traffic jam and all the other cars are conspiring to prevent her from getting to her Pilates class on time. Everybody else is in her way. She's not in their way. They're in her way. I mean, why is there traffic on the road in the first place? Well, because lots of people are trying to go in the same direction at the same time. That's also why nobody has the right to be angry about it. Everybody is part of the problem. But Brittany can't see it that way. Brittany's also the sort of person who comes home at night and inflicts her self-centered miseries on whoever has the misfortune of living with her. She'll go into long, drawn-out, epic stories describing every irritation she experienced that day, explaining how everyone is out to get her all the time, the world is so unfair, and so on. What she really needs, but probably doesn't have, is some kind-hearted, compassionate person to say to her, "Hey, Brittany, shut up. You're not special. You're not a victim. The only thing unique about you is that you handle inconvenience much worse than the average person. Other than that, your life is exceedingly average. Your experiences are not incredible or even interesting. And so I'm going to leave now, and I'll let you continue ranting to the wall because I suspect it'd be all the same to you anyway." Brittany needs to hear that. Lots of people do. But like lots of people, she never has. Until now. So you're welcome, Brittany. And also, of course, you're canceled. Listen, hit that subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.